When my mother died, I was very young, and my father sold me while yet my tongue could scarcely cry, "Weep, weep, weep, weep." So your chimneys I sweep, and in soot I sleep. There's little Tom Dacre who cried when his head, that curled like a lamb's back, was shaved, so I said, "Hush, Tom, never mind it, for when your head's bare, you know that the soot."
And so he was quiet, and that very night, as Tom was a-sleeping, he had such a sight, that thousands of sweepers, Dick, Joe, Ned, and Jack, were all of them locked up in coffins of black. And by came an angel who had a bright key, and he opened the coffins and set them all free. Then down a green plain, leaping, laughing, they run, and wash in a river and shine in the sun.
Then, naked and white, all their bags left behind, they rise up on clouds and sport in the wind. And the angel told Tom if he'd be a good boy, he'd have God for his father and never want joy. And so Tom awoke, and we rose in the dark, and got with our bags and our brushes to work. Though the morning was cold, Tom was happy and warm, so if all do their duty, they need not fear harm. The fire of London in the 1600s destroyed most of the city and struck fear into the hearts of the citizens. In reaction to the spontaneous fires, building codes in London changed significantly in hopes to prevent other fires from starting. One of the changes that was put into effect was the narrowing of chimneys. A tighter space called for the chimneys to be cleaned by smaller people who could easily climb up them, so children were put to work. Master sweeps went to different orphanages to purchase children to perform these duties. In many cases, homeless children were taken off the streets and turned into indentured servants. The chimney sweeps were usually young boys from age 5 to 10. Most were under 7 years old. These climbing boys, as they were called, would walk up and down the streets announcing their services by crying out, "Sweep, sweep." Most were so young that they could not even properly pronounce the S in sweep. The working conditions for these boys were harsh. They were barely fed, slept in basements, and some went months without a bath. If the boys were reluctant to climb up the narrow chimneys, the master sweep would light a fire in the pit to make them have to go up the chimney. The climbing boys' job was not finished until they were able to poke their heads out of the chimney top. In addition to their poor treatment, many boys were severely injured, suffered from disease and cancer, and even suffocated in the chimneys because of the dangerous toxins in them. At the time, the majority of people were unsympathetic to the conditions of the chimney sweeps and even saw them as scary monsters to be avoided. The invention of modern chimney sweeping tools, along with a rise in literature with a focus in social justice, helped bring an end to this terrible practice. William Blake's The Chimney Sweeper is an influential piece of literature that brought attention to the plight of the chimney sweep.
The Chimney Sweeper, a romantic poem, is found in Songs of Innocence by William Blake. Songs of Innocence is a good fit for the poem because it's about the young and innocent Tom Dacre, whose dream is visualized as a bringer of hope. The poem has a very emotional tone, and the image of children chimney sweeps being freed and rejoicing is vividly affectionate and spiritual. This strong emotional tone is only enhanced by the poetic devices used by Blake. The poem has a perfect rhyme scheme of AABB until the last two stanzas, where perfect rhyme turns to slant rhyme, perhaps with the intent to jolt the audience awake from a rhythmic lull in order to send a message. This message is sent to the middle class in order to unveil the negative effects that being forced to chimney sweep has on innocent children. Along with Blake's clever rhyme scheme, he also uses imagery to complement the emotional tone of the poem. This imagery brings Tom Dacre's dream to life as the freed children go, down a green plain leaping, laughing they run, and wash in a river and shine in the sun. This line, along with the rest describing the freed chimney sweeps, presents a sense of happiness to readers, but only until the dream ends and Tom and the other boys must continue their young working lives. The boys were often sent up the chimneys naked so they could move quicker and without catching their clothes on the side, so this image of the boys being naked and being able to wash off in the river after being confined in the chimney, only being let outside to be quickly brushed off, was a connection between his dream imagery and his ordinary life. As a child and then throughout his adulthood, Blake claimed to have vivid dreams and visions, especially about angels. These visions inspired much of Blake's works and also, seemingly, Tom Dacre's dream in The Chimney Sweeper. Blake also presents a crafty play on words by writing the little chimney sweep could scarcely cry, weep, 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 weep. At first, this appears to be a cry for help, but it's actually pointing to the sad fact that the chimney sweeps start working at an age before they can even pronounce the S in sweep. The use of the letter S in line 4 sounds like a chimney brush being used. Blake uses these poetic devices to enhance his emotional message in this anapaestic poem. The illustration that accompanies the chimney sweeper is of Tom Dacre's dream, which shows all the children who have died due to the dangers of chimney sweeping being freed by Jesus. In the poem, instead of Jesus, and by came an angel who had a bright key, and he opened the coffins and set them all free. The angel and the key in the poem are metaphors for Jesus, drawn in the illuminated print as Blake's Jesus figure is in other works by him. They are portrayed running, laughing, and rejoicing in the sunshine, running away from the black coffin and toward the river. The C in the title The Chimney Sweeper holds the figure of a little boy holding his sack of soot. The black at the bottom of the image symbolizes being pulled from the darkness of their working lives, and the children are now white, symbolizing their purity and innocence. This is Blake's way of disguising the social message of the poem, providing a false sense of security for the middle class until they reach the warning at the end.
William Blake's poetry is known today, in part, for its social commentary on England in the late 1700s and early 1800s. Clearly, his poems on chimney sweepers highlighted problems and corruption in a common and necessary business. This awareness of the injustices around him began at an early age. After 4 years of attending Henry Parr's drawing school, Blake began an apprenticeship with James Bassire at 14 years old. Bassire was an engraver for the Antiquities Society and the Royal Society. On a few occasions, Bassire would send Blake out on an assignment in order to get him out of the shop and away from the dissension brewing among the newer apprentices, according to the Blake Archives biography. One of these outings led him to the house of a wealthy Royal Society member on a day when the chimney was being cleaned. As he walked into the man's parlor, he saw sheets laid down on the floor and over the furniture, and a man standing at the foot of the fireplace with a chimney brush, shoving the brush up and down the narrow space. Each push was followed by a muffled scream. Blake realized that the man wasn't using the brush for cleaning, but to prod at a person who was inside the chimney. Shocked, he continued to watch as a young boy, maybe 4 or 5, climbed out of the opening in the wall, covered in soot and completely naked. His knees and elbows were bloody and scraped. The little boy took the bag of soot and set it on a part of the cloth out of the way of the chimney. Blake offered to dispose of the bag, feeling compassion upon the boy and wanting to help, but the young boy stopped him, saying that he used bags of soot to sleep on at night. Blake was then ushered out of the room to attend to the job he was there to do. This situation stuck with him. According to the detailed diary of a newer apprentice of Bassire, Blake returned from the job quite upset and snapped at one of the other workers who was complaining about the tediousness of the job. The diary reveals that Blake told the young man of the horror he had just witnessed towards a child, and that he should be grateful for the conditions he worked in. Blake walked off muttering about how he came to deserve the life he had, while some children were manipulated and killed in their jobs before they could even speak correctly. Scholars who have read this young apprentice's account of Blake's experience believe that this event inspired his well-known poem, The Chimney Sweeper. When my mother died, I was very young, and my father sold me while yet my tongue could scarcely cry, weep, 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 weep. So your chimneys I sweep, and in soot I sleep. There's little Tom Dacre who cried when his head, that curled like a lamb's back, was shaved, so I said, "Hush, Tom, never mind it, for when your head's bare, you know that the soot
And so he was quiet, and that very night, as Tom was a-sleeping, he had such a sight, that thousands of sweepers, Dick, Joe, Ned, and Jack, were all of them locked up in coffins of black. And by came an angel who had a bright key, and he opened the coffins and set them all free. Then down a green plain, leaping, laughing, they run, and wash in a river and shine in the sun.
Then, naked and white, all their bags left behind, they rise up on clouds and sport in the wind. And the angel told Tom if he'd be a good boy, he'd have God for his father and never want joy. And so Tom awoke, and we rose in the dark, and got with our bags and our brushes to work. Though the morning was cold, Tom was happy and warm, so if all do their duty, they need not fear harm.